Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. We are moving right along here, moving on to the third passage of the 2014 AP exam for language and composition. This passage is a little friendlier for us, and while it is more accessible in understanding the syntax and the diction, it is challenging in that it introduces and asks many questions about research writing skills. So, though it is an easier read, I would argue, it is a challenge because it is asking you how well you can understand research writing and the suggestions of research writing clues. So, this will be helpful to you not just in reading researched writing, but in your own writing of research papers. Remember that the essay number 3 is essentially, it is number 1 now. The AP synthesis question is essentially a mini essay of research skills. Okay, it is a research paper, a mini research paper. So it should look something like what you see here. Okay, in this passage uses footnotes, and you will be using parenthetical notations for your citations in your source writing for the synthesis essay. But there are similarities. So this is an important cross-reference to skills that you need to pass this test. You certainly need to be able to do that synthesis essay fully and well. Okay, so let's see where we have these interconnected thoughts. Questions 25 to 37. Read the following passage carefully before you choose your answers. Okay, good advice. You do want to read and you want to hear this passage in your head. Now, I'm reading it aloud to you, but when you first took this test, were you engaged enough in the reading of this passage that you actually read each word aloud in your head? Of course, you can't read it out loud, vocalizing, but you should hear these words in your head and not just run your eyes over the page. Okay, here we go. This is, whoops, excuse me. Got things a little too sensitive here. This passage is taken from a book that examines Canadian book clubs. So pronounced is the book club phenomenon that the format has spread to other venues and media. Okay, other venues. A venue is simply a place where something happens, okay, a location. The most famous of these being the book club component of Oprah Winfrey's television talk show. I always am happy to see Oprah Winfrey's name. This is her talk show. We know she no longer has a talk show on network TV, but she is still a widely known figure. Okay, so this must be back in the 80s or 90s. Staged like an actual book club group meeting, staged like an actual book group meeting with invited discussants and a cozy living room setting. The Winfrey Show can boost a featured title to instant bestsellerdom and turn authors into stars. There are now book clubs online, in bookstores, and functioning as consumer focus groups for publishers. A consumer focus group is a group that gets together, usually at the behest, at being asked by some organization that is trying to sell something. And so they ask these focus groups whether they would buy a certain item under certain conditions. Okay. Colleges, bookstores, and resorts have recently begun to develop reader retreats. Newsletters, magazines, newspapers, and published guides advise readers how to find, establish, and manage successful clubs. Okay, so new kinds of book clubs, some are being used for publishers, in marketing, online, in bookstores, and focus groups. Others are colleges, bookstores, and resorts having retreats. That sounds like a kind of vacation. And then these newsletters, magazines, and guides. Please notice that each one of these sentences, here in this first paragraph, these last three sentences, each have a raised footnote. Okay? Footnote 1, footnote 2, footnote 3. To find out what that footnote is all about, we have to scroll down and take a look at it. Now, it is up to you whether you come to a good stopping place, like I did at the end of a paragraph, and check out the footnotes relevant to that paragraph, or that you stop every time you see a footnote, okay? Sometimes you'll see footnotes built within a sentence, and so do you need to stop? Now, the rule of thumb in regard to footnotes is they are giving you extra information about the point being made in the in the sentence or in the grammatical unit. So we see that these three footnotes are talking about book clubs relevant to each of those sentences. For an example of an online book club, this one produced by Mass Market Circulation Women's Magazine, see Conversations Book Club. Okay, and they give you the website. Okay, so this is giving us an example of something that happened in that sentence. All right, let's look at number 2. For example, we're getting another example. Vancouver bookseller Celia Duthie is developing such retreats at a country inn. There are discussion periods and visits by authors, and most importantly, time to read. Okay, that sounds like my kind of vacation. And number 3, some popular guides are The Go On Girl. Okay, are Greenwood et al. You remember what et al. Stands for? I hope you're saying it to the screen. Et al. And all the others. So Greenwood isn't the only author here. Greenwood is in a group. It must be a group of more than 3. So 4 to a bazillion and 4 other authors wrote this book, The Go On Girl. Another book, we've got a semicolon here after that exclamation mark. Jacobson, The Reading Group Handbook, and Saul, The New York Public Library Guide to Reading Groups. All right, so these are popular guides. A new entry to the field, developed with a particular eye to the needs of Canadian clubs, is Hefton O'Brien Build a Better Book Club. So they even have specialized book clubs for Canadians. Okay, all right. Now, we had 3 footnotes in a row. You can expect we're going to get questions about that, right? How are these footnotes functioning? What's going on in them? Here we go, line 16. The widespread popularity of these reading groups has even occasioned a form of book club backlash. All right, all of a sudden, once anything is super popular, there's always a group that reacts against that, right? There are always some haters out there. In a newspaper opinion piece titled, Why I Won't Join the Book Club, one contributor expressed alarm that reading was becoming another scheduled activity to be slotted in, quote, like the trip to the gym and the grocery store. Okay, so clearly this author is unhappy. The book clubs are just one more thing you've got to figure out how to find time for, and you've got to schedule for it. Okay, self-improving readers pop books as they would vitamin tablets. All right, so we've got a metaphor here that you're swallowing books just like you would take something good for you like a vitamin, and not thinking very deeply about it, just pretending you take it and you can eat whatever you want. You can go visit a book club and all of a sudden you'll be an intellectual. Okay. But books are not about schedules, author Stephanie Nolan argues. Rather, they are about submerging yourself, about getting lost, about getting consumed. Number 4, we see a footnote. I'm going to stop right here because we have this newspaper piece, Why I Won't Join the Book Club, and then we have Stephanie Nolan and what she is saying here. And let's see what this is saying, because we've got a lot happening. Nolan, Why I Won't Join the Book Club. All right, this looks just like a footnote for the piece she wrote, this newspaper opinion piece. Okay. All right, so this is still her talking. Considerable attention was garnered by another article detailing the darker side of some New York City reading groups. Headlined. Okay, so apparently it's not just about scheduling. There is a dark side. Wonder what that is. Headlined, Book Club Lovers Wage a War of Words. When reprinted by the Globe and Mail, it could equally well have been titled, When Book Clubs Go Bad. Quote, and we've got a colon. We see this colon here, introducing a formal, lengthy quote. We've got a sentence coming before, we've got a sentence coming after. So we have this formal introduction of a colon setting off this quotation. No longer just friendly social gatherings with a vague continuing education agenda. Many of today's book groups have become literary pressure cookers, marked by aggressive intellectual one-upsmanship. One-upsmanship means I'm going to say something that's just a little better than what you just said, okay? I want to prove that I'm just a little bit better than what you are. You might, see one-upsmanship in maybe in how people dress, or how the cars they drive. Somebody gets a new car and somebody else wants the car that's just a little bit fancier and nicer in that group of friends. Okay, so this is what one-upsmanship means. All right, but this is aggressive intellectual one-upsmanship. So what are you going to do? You're going to show aggressively, you're going to show how you are just a little bit smarter than that other jerk in the room. Okay, so this sounds unhappy. Okay, and it sounds it sounds feisty and difficult. Okay, marked by aggressive intellectual one-upsmanship and unabashed social skirmishing. Okay, so they are kind of fighting here socially in these book clubs. Okay, it's no longer just a friendly social gathering with everybody trying to just improve themselves a little bit. It becomes, I'm smarter than you, I understand this book better than you, and that's why I'm a better human being or more impressive socially. Okay, let's go back. In living rooms and bookshops, clubs are frazzling under the stress, giving rise to a whole new profession. We've got the colon here to set up something dramatic. The book group therapist. Okay, people need to go to counseling because their book club, their book group is so intense and so hateful. Okay, that's kind of sad. The clubs that Elaine Daspin describes here seem to be functioning as unconsciousness rather than consciousness raising sessions where competitive readers battle for interpretive supremacy. All right, let's go and take a look at this footnote here, number 5, and see what happens there. Okay, I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. This is Daspin. That's the last name. Book club lovers wage a war of words. The piece originally appeared in the Wall Street Journal. Okay, please notice that this citation and these footnotes are not MLA format, which is all you are required to learn and all you are required to do. But this is showing you another format. Remember, we said MLA is not the only kind of research writing format. There are many others. And here we are looking at another. Remember, we said there is the history, the Trabian, and the Chicago Manual of Style. There is the Association of the APA, the American Psychological Association, has their own style, and the CBE, and for use in the sciences. So there are different styles. If you go to a good style manual, you can find these different styles. But the reason this isn't following us, doesn't look like exactly like what you've learned in to format, isn't because it's incorrect. It's that they are using, they're correctly following a different type of style. Okay. All right. Let's go back up. We were looking at this, the clubs that Elaine Daspin describes here. Here would be what? That article in the Wall Street Journal. While book club therapists may well be confined to the rarefied worlds, let's take a look at that, of the Upper East Side or Long Island, authors of recent book club guides reiterate the need to establish common purposes, regular routines, and guidelines for thorough preparation. That word rarefied means, it means rare, as in unusual. The Upper East Side is a very elite section of New York City, where the upper crust, where the extreme wealthy live, and there are parts also of Long Island that have enclaves of extreme wealth. So those are the folks that are going to have book club therapists, because they can afford not only to spend their leisure time at book clubs, but then they can also go to therapists to get treatment for the social harm those book clubs do. Obviously, this is kind of extreme and something that is intended to be so good for you and fun is actually harmful. It's a little ironic. You get that. Authors of recent book club guides reiterate the need. Okay, so while this is the case, some of these people need this kind of advice. Most people, okay, authors of recent book club guides reiterate, they tell you, they go over again and again the need to establish, here's some simple things: have a common purpose, have a regular routine, and prepare yourself. Okay, thorough guidelines for thorough preparation. Everybody should have read the book and thought about a question or something like that. Okay, all right, that wraps up second paragraph. Let's go to the third paragraph. Clearly, the positives outweigh the pitfalls. The positives of what? Attending a book club outweigh the pitfalls of, getting into intellectual disagreements. Notice here that while before the author was just telling us what was going on in the world, she was sort of surveying issues in the world. Here she is taking a stand, or he is, we don't know the gender, taking a clear stand. The positives outweigh the pitfalls. Boom, that's her or his analysis. That's this author's statement. Book clubs are in demand because they offer individual readers an extra dimension of appreciation and understanding. Yet despite the fact that shared discussion of literary texts is also the foundation of literary study in school, college, and university classrooms, literary theorists and reader response critics have yet to devote much attention to such shared and synergistic study, instead construing readers as isolates or abstractions. Okay, you remember that a synergistic effect, this is taking one of your biology words or your chemistry words and using it here, applying it here outside of the field of science. But is essentially saying that a lot of reading that we do, we get to talk to others about. And school, or at least literary theorists and reader response critics, these people who write about how literature has an impact on readers, pretend that we always read in isolation, or we are abstractly experiencing a text. Studies tend to focus on the emotional responses or cognitive activities of individual readers, or to infer such reactions by examining the properties of a literary text. Okay, so here in parentheses, remember parentheses whisper, we're getting more information about those folks, these folks who, these literary theorists and reader response critics, these folks who analyze literature. How do they do it? Their studies tend to focus on the emotional responses or cognitive activities of individual readers, or they infer such reactions by examining the properties of a literary text. Okay, so they figure out, by reading a literary text, they figure out how an individual would react. They don't report on what a book club said when they're writing their literary theory or their reader response criticism. But club and classroom participants know that there is something different, something added about sharing and discussing literature with other people. Okay. Pardon me. I know that you know that because we've talked a little bit about how you like to talk about books that you've had in common in reading with your classmates. All right, here we go with the questions. I think I hope that analysis, pardon me, helped to make clear the passage. Now, what the first question is asking is the organization of the passage can best be described as. All right, this is an ongoing kind of question you're going to be asked. So stop and take a look before you even start reading. How long is the passage? How many paragraphs? What does it just physically look like? That won't answer this question, but it will help you tune in so that you become more sensitive to the organization of the passage, which will, as we've seen in the first two passages, will find its way into a question. The organization of the passage can best be described as personal narrative, followed by analysis. Well, not really. She's not telling us what she does at book clubs, so we don't have a personal narrative. It's not a narration, that is, first I did this and then I did that. There is analysis at the end, and there is more personal insight, personal research at the beginning. And then we get her analysis. But this is not such a clear best answer. Empirical data. I don't see much empirical data. We don't have a 75% of all readers go to a book club. So I don't see empirical data. We can rule that one out immediately. Non-judgmental explanation of a current phenomenon followed by a question. Well, it is a non-judgmental explanation of a current phenomenon, but it's not followed by a question. We don't get a question. We get her taking a stand. Descriptive analysis followed by a final judgment. Do we get a lot of description at the beginning? Here are all the kinds of book clubs. Here's how they work. Here are the problems with some of them. Here are what the critics say. Followed by a final judgment. Yep, remember, the positives outweigh the pitfalls. Okay. Condemnation of a practice followed by a partial acceptance. She doesn't condemn the practice of book clubs. D is the best answer. In context, the author places the term book club in quotation marks in lines 3 and 9 in order to show that these are humorous examples. Well, they're not always humorous. They're maybe ironic, but not necessarily. We don't put things, we don't use quotation marks to just make people laugh. So that's an illogical assertion of the use of quotation marks. Highlight how formal some of these book clubs are? No. We can put things in quotation marks that are informal. Quotation marks do many things. How are they functioning in these two lines? In order to reveal that book clubs that appear online or on television are unsatisfactory. No, she doesn't take a stand there. That's just an incorrect statement. We can rule that out. Suggest that the term is being broadened. Okay, is the term book club being broadened beyond its original meaning? Yes, it's being broadened by marketing research groups. It's being broadened by retreats. It's being broadened in many ways. Okay, but let's make sure we don't have a better answer here. Imply that many book club members do not like the term. No, we don't have any assertion that people who are parts of book clubs are protesting the term. D is clearly our best answer. Let's keep moving. 27, the first paragraph, lines 1 through 15. Okay, this is that's the whole first paragraph. The first paragraph, lines 1 to 15, serves to explain why the author enjoys one way of reading. Nope, that's not what we get. Describe the extension of a particular activity into non-traditional areas. Well, sure, it sure does that. Okay, this is a particular activity, the book clubs, and it's been extended as in the ways we just talked about above into non-traditional areas like TV programs and marketing research groups. Okay, so that's a good one. Let's double check, make sure there isn't anything better. Make generalizations that will be developed later? No. She speaks about in specific terms about what's going on at this historical moment. Explore ways in which people can structure free time. No, she does not spend her time in those paragraphs doing that. Detail the power of media and mass marketing. Ooh, we're good so far, but to censor? There's no mention of censorship. Okay? Media and mass marketing. Oprah Winfrey's TV show and mass marketing are detailed in that paragraph, but not because they want to censor, but because they want to leverage the popularity of the book club activity. So B is the correct answer, and there's no competition there. Hope you got it right. Are you checking your answers? According to lines 23 through 27, Stephanie Nolan's primary criticism of book clubs is that they are too programmed, do not offer enough variety. Well, remember, she didn't like that they were programs scheduled into your day. Do not offer enough variety. She doesn't say anything about that. Cause readers to be anxious. Well, she does say that, you've got to schedule it into your busy day. But the anxiety that we're talking about is really not in hers. The anxiety where you need a therapist, that's in a different passage. Overlooks many classics. She doesn't say anything about that. They forego quality for quantity. Well, she's not saying that they give up. Forego means to give up quality for quantity so that you can have a lot of them. They might be high quality. She just thinks that they are too programmed into your daily life. Okay? So A is the best answer. The rest of these don't quite make sense. And she doesn't mention that the book clubs are low quality because they're trying to do so many. She doesn't say that. She just says it's just one more thing that you've got to negotiate into your already busy day. Okay. Question 29. The clubs referred to in line 39 are discussed in, line 39 is the clubs that Elaine Daspin describes here seem to be functioning as, and these are the pressure cooker kind of clubs. Okay. The clubs referred to in line 39 are discussed in the online discussion of a particular book club. Oh, so look, where did she get the information about the clubs referred to in line 39? Okay, I'm going to scroll back up here and just take a look at that. Here's line 39. The clubs that Elaine Daspin describes here. Okay, where do we find out where these clubs that she's talking about, where do we find out where that information comes from? It actually comes from this footnote right here, footnote 5. And remember what footnote 5 was? Daspin, book club lovers wage a war of words. This piece originally appeared in the Wall Street Journal. This was an article in the Wall Street Journal. Remember, italics mean it would be underlined, okay, or underlining tells the publisher to set it in italics. Okay, so she wrote an article and it was published in the Wall Street Journal. Let's get back down to this question, 29. The club referred to in lines 39 are discussed in E, an article written in the Wall Street Journal. Okay, none of these others, not an online discussion group, not a study, no study mentioned, not an editorial in a Canadian magazine. Okay, a guide, it isn't a guide, it was an article. Okay, all of you should have been able to figure this out. All of you should have been able to get this right simply by referencing the footnotes. Okay, 29, shouldn't have missed it. If you did, next time, pay attention to your footnotes. Lesson of this reading, pay attention to your footnotes. Okay, the recent book club guides tend to emphasize, in lines 44 to 46, tend to emphasize, okay, this is the one where it says, you know, for those who can't afford a therapist, authors generally give common sense guidelines, and we said what 3 there are. Tend to emphasize how book clubs need to be structured and regular in order to succeed. Okay, remember they said you have to have guidelines. That sounds good, right? They were structured, how often they were going to happen. In line 46, you should have a common purpose, a regular routine, and guidelines for thorough preparation. A looks good. B, how difficult it is to start a book club in New York. No, it was about book clubs anywhere. How often even the best book clubs fail. Didn't say anything about that. The variety of reasons that people have for starting book clubs, no mention of it. The challenges of selecting books for discussion. Well, that's the part I find most interesting in book clubs myself, is how do these people decide what books are worthy of reading? But that wasn't mentioned in lines 45 to 46. A is clearly the best answer. Okay. 31. The last paragraph, lines 49 to 64. That's the whole section. Marks a shift from popular to academic context. Remember we were talking about scholars who study literature and how they treat the reader as isolated. So that does look good, but let's read all of them. It's a shift from supported to unsound generalizations. No. Impersonal to personal examples. We don't get a personal example in the end paragraph. Subtle irony. We do get some irony here and there. To explicit sarcasm. We don't have any sarcasm in the last paragraph. Neutral to negative characterizations of book clubs. No. What she's saying is that universities, the analysis of scholars is not keeping up with the trend of book clubs in their analysis, okay, in the kind of scholarly work they do. Clearly, popular to academic context. The popular phenomenon is what she's writing about, and then she starts talking about how academics, those theorists and critics, aren't keeping up with it, okay? So theorists and critics, by the way, are kind of what scientists are to engineering and biology and chemistry. Theorists and critics are to literary studies, all right? All right, question 32. The function of line 52 to 58 from yet despite Line 52. Yet, despite the fact that shared discussion of literary texts is also the foundation of literary study in school, college, and university classrooms, literary theorists and reader response critics have yet to devote much attention to such shared and synergistic study. Remember that one? Okay. What is the function? To argue for the value of a particular literary theory. Please notice how close these two questions are. Okay? It's saying what's the content of the last paragraph, and now it's saying in that particular sentence, which is the linchpin sentence of the paragraph, what's going on. So actually you're getting two questions about the overall meaning of that paragraph based on the overall meaning of the sentence. Both of these questions are asking you the same sort of thing. Okay? The function of line 52 is to argue for the value of a particular literary theory? No. It's saying that literary theory needs to look at things differently, explain how important it is to not make abstract judgments. No, it's not arguing that. It's saying that literary criticism needs to consider the phenomenon of book club and other kind of social interactions in regard to understanding stories. Point out a discrepancy between teaching practices, where we in a classroom talk about what a book means, and literary theory, where theorists pretend that the reader is in isolation. That's the good answer. It's probably the right one, but let's double check the rest. Highlight the demand for a way of measuring emotional responses to text. That's kind of a good wrong answer. I like that, but it is not capturing the juxtaposition of those, of this social interaction against the reality that nobody talks about it. Explore the author's view about reading in isolation. She doesn't have an opinion about reading in isolation. She just thinks that scholarship is not keeping up with the fact that people don't always read in isolation. 32. Correct answer is C. I can see why people would pick E, but I hope you see how this captures the function of the total line. It doesn't just talk about one point that is being made in that line. It talks about that whole lengthy sentence. You've got to look at the whole sentence, just not one idea in that sentence. Okay. 33, we're heading to the end here. The final sentence, line 62 to 64, serves to, okay, here's the wrap up. But club and classroom participants know that there is something different, something added about sharing and discussing literature with other people. Okay, what is that final sentence doing? Concludes an argument begun in the first paragraph? Well, not really. She comes up with this, but she doesn't begin this argument in the first paragraph. She sets up the whole phenomenon of book clubs. Suggests a probable cause for an ongoing phenomenon. Hey, yeah, it's a phenomenon, it's a trend, because guess what? People know that it is valuable. And there is something different about the experience of a book when you get a chance to talk about it. I like that answer. Let's see if there's anything better. B looks good. C, argue that publishers need to pay more attention. No mention of publishers. D, offer a final analysis of the phenomenon described in the second paragraph. No, she's let go of the therapist described in the second paragraph. Explain why the author has chosen a particular field of study. Nope, it's not about the author's field of study. It's B, suggest a probable cause for an ongoing phenomenon. All right, please notice that the next 3, 4 sentences are all about the footnotes. You've got to learn to read the footnotes and see how they function. One function of sentence 3, lines 8 to 10, and footnote 1 is to give an example of a group that earns money by reading. Okay. 34. I don't want to turn all the way back there. You remember this footnote. It is an example of an online book club. This one produced by mass market circulation women's magazines. Okay, 34. It does give an example, but of a group that earns money by reading? No, they're not. We don't know that they're earning money. Shows the book clubs are not intended for literary scholars. It's not proving that. That might be true, but it's not. The footnote does and the sentence don't prove that. Note the connection between marketing and book clubs. Oh yeah, it was giving us an example of how marketing people are getting involved in the book club movement. Cite one book club as a particular model of excellence. It does just talk about one book club, but not because it was so great, just because it was illustrating a, a reality, a point she was making. Suggest the benefits. Nope, no benefits mentioned. C is the best answer. Okay. It can be inferred from footnote 2 that Out of the Woods is, remember the second footnote was about the retreats, that you can go on a reading retreat. It was, for example, Vancouver bestsellers Celia Dulce is developing such retreats as A Country Inn. And you know what? We should go back at this, okay, to look at this footnote. Here we go. There are discussion periods and visits. This is what would happen at these retreats and visits by authors, and most importantly, time to read. If you want to find out about this phenomenon, you would have to go to this guy's article called Out of the Woods. How do I know it's an article, folks? Well, it's a short work because it's in parentheses. Okay, let's go back to our question number 35. Here we go. It can be inferred from footnote 2 that Out of the Woods is an article, an expose, an essay, a meditation, an article. An article, okay, so all of those are short. All of them make a point about, or make note of the fact that this is not a long work, okay? Is it an article about a type of retreat? Yeah, it could be, yeah. Well, that looks good. Let's see if there's anything else. It says, is it an expose? An expose reveals something that you didn't know that's negative, okay? You find out that the guy's a liar or a cheat, okay? That's what an expose is. We don't have any information here that is negative about this retreat. It sounds kind of fun to me. Is it an essay about book club protocol? No, it's not. A meditation? No. An article about how to start a traditional book club? No, it's not. It's about this phenomenon of going on these retreats. The function of footnote 3 is to, okay, and this footnote was the one that we're giving some popular guides are Greenwood, and then it listed several guides. And then it even said there's a guide particularly for Canadian book club. Okay, so what's the function of footnote 3? To offer specific examples of one of the types of resources mentioned. Sure, it gives many examples of a kind of resource, a type, one of the kinds of resources that is mentioned. Okay, so that looks good. Convince the readers of the value of book clubs? Nope, it's kind of telling you how to get them set up. Test whether the reader is interested. Nope. Evaluate tips on how to set up books, because there is no test here. Evaluate tips on how to set up book clubs. Well, it does say that these resources will help you to set up a book club. But is that the function of the footnote? Is it evaluating those tips? No. The footnote is giving you examples of a kind of resource. Hey, there are a lot of these books out there that will help tell you how to set up a book club. Here are several. Those aren't the tips about how to do it. They're resources on how to do it. So these are close, but A is clearly the better answer. Compare the strength and weakness of certain books. No, easy to eliminate that one. Okay, so if you got it down to A and D and then did some critical thinking, you could figure out which is the best response to this question. All right, here we go. Last question, again with the footnotes. The information in footnote 2 is different from that in footnote 3, in that footnote 2 is critical. Now remember, the footnote 2 is the one about the retreat, the reading retreat, and footnote 3 is the list of all kinds of resources about creating book clubs. In that footnote 2 is critical. In that footnote 2 assumes that readers do not like research. Footnote 2 is concerned with local book clubs. Footnote 2 is primarily provides an illustration. Footnote 2 relates mostly to marketing. Okay. Just at the beginning of this, we can say it has nothing to do with marketing. It's not anything to do with local book club. Remember what footnote 2 it is about. Footnote 2 is about the retreat, going on these retreats, and how this is a new spin-off of the kinds of ways people are valuing book clubs and making them more widespread. They're coming up with new ways of having book clubs. It's not critical. Okay, so we've got it narrowed down to B and D. Okay, does footnote 2 assumes that the readers do not like research? Doesn't make that assumption that they don't like research. Well, EndNote 3 assumes the readers like research. There's nothing like that going on. Footnote 2 is a very different kind of footnote. It's not about research at all. Let's see, is D any better? And by the way, I just wanted to show you that you don't even have to look at these whole prompts. The distractor can be, you can eliminate it. If any part of it is wrong, then the whole thing is wrong. Okay. The information in footnote 2 is different from that in footnote 3, in that footnote 2 primarily provides an illustration of a phenomenon. That is, yes, it illustrates the phenomenon of, wow, they're coming up with new ways to have book clubs. While EndNote 3 primarily lists resources. Yes, exactly. All right. The end of this passage. We are going to go on to the final passage, and that will be questions 38 to 50 in the next video. I hope you're staying tuned with these videos and finding them useful. All right. I hope you have a good day. Talk to you about the next passage next time. Bye-bye.